The Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus is a thought experiment that asks a very simple question. How many pieces of wood can you replace before a ship becomes a fraud? Imagine you own a ship. Over time, one plank gets old, so you replace it. Then another, and another. Fast forward, and now every single piece has been replaced. Is it still the same ship? Now imagine you took all the old parts and built another ship. Okay, which one's the real Theseus now? This is where philosophers put on their deep thoughts hats and pretend identity is a game of Jenga. Is identity about continuity or components? Or is this just a fancy way of asking if your 2009 Facebook self is still you? Fun twist, this isn't just about boats. Your entire body replaces its cells over time. You're basically a refurbished meat balloon. Are you still you? Or just a walking warranty? People believe that it is more of a question of identity, which means if the new object still identifies itself as the old object, its identity never changes. It is all about how you identify yourself. The Grandfather Paradox. Ah yes, this is a time travel classic. You go back in time and kill your grandfather before he ever meets your grandma. Result? Your parents were never born, which means you're never born, which means you don't go back in time, which means your grandpa doesn't die, which means... what is the reality, even? This paradox broke so many brains it became the unofficial plot device of every sci-fi movie ever, except for the ones that don't care. Looking at you, Fast and Furious 9. There are solutions, sort of. First, we have multiverse theory. You didn't kill your grandpa, just a grandpa in a parallel timeline. Congrats. You're still awkward at family dinners. And another one could be causal loops, like maybe time doesn't let you change the past. Like an angry mom who says, "I said no!" In summary, time travel is cool, until it deletes you before you existed. Or, as philosophers put it, you can't go home again, especially if you murdered it. The Barber Paradox. Imagine a town with one barber. He shaves everyone who doesn't shave themselves. Simple, right? Now ask, does the barber shave himself? If he shaves himself, then he violates his own rule to shave only those who can't shave themselves. This logical trap was created by Bertrand Russell, a philosopher who apparently had way too much free time and a mustache to match. It's not just a riddle, it's a landmine for logic. A contradiction wrapped in a riddle, delivered in a very sharp metaphor. This paradox exposes flaws in self-referential systems, aka situations where a rule applies to itself. Kind of like a sign that says, "Ignore this sign." Or an influencer who posts "social media is toxic" on TikTok. It sounds silly, but this concept shook math and logic so hard that even computer scientists cried into their keyboards. Modern takeaway? If you ever meet a barber who claims to shave only those who don't shave themselves, run! He's either a paradox or an unpaid intern stuck in a Russell simulation. The Liar Paradox. The Liar Paradox is a classic mindbender that plays a clever trick using nothing but language. It revolves around a very simple sentence. This statement is false. Sounds innocent, right? But here's where the brain starts to ache. If the sentence is true, then what it says must hold. But what it says is that it's false. So if it's true, it's false. But wait, if it's false, then the statement isn't false, which would make it true again. And we're stuck in a loop. This paradox is important in philosophy, logic, and even computer science, because it challenges the basic idea that every statement is either true or false. It breaks the neat little box we want to put logic in. Some have tried to fix it by creating new kinds of logic systems, but no solution has wiped it out completely. The Liar Paradox teaches us that language isn't always straightforward, and even a single sentence can turn our understanding of truth upside down. It's a favorite example in discussions about self-reference and contradiction, and it's a perfect reminder that not everything that makes sense grammatically makes sense logically. The Bootstrap Paradox. The Bootstrap Paradox is also known as the paradox of things that have no beginning. Let's say you travel back in time and give Beethoven his own sheet music. He copies it, performs it, and becomes famous. Years later, you get that music, and go back to give it to him, so who wrote it? No one. Or everyone. Or the universe is gaslighting itself. The paradox questions the origin. Something exists without ever being created. It's just there, because time travel turned the timeline into a Mobius strip. This similar thing also works with inventions, books, memes, and that one banana bread recipe you found in 2017. The Bootstrap Paradox is a sci-fi favorite. Shows like Doctor Who use it to flex on linear time. Scientists say it might be possible if time travel exists and if the universe doesn't implode from the irony. Spoiler, we're still figuring that out. So if you ever meet a future version of yourself who hands you your own diary, just nod. You're in a paradox now. Sorites Paradox. The Sorites Paradox, also known as the paradox of the heap, starts with a simple question. If you have a heap of sand and remove one grain, is it still a heap? Most people would say yes. But if you keep removing one grain at a time, when exactly does it stop being a heap? The Sorites Paradox is a mind game about how tiny changes, repeated enough, make a big difference. But we can't pin down when the change actually happens. Let's take your phone storage. You keep adding photos. One more picture doesn't fill your memory, neither does another. But one day there was a storage full notification. When did your phone go from having plenty of space to being completely clogged? Or think about growing up. You don't suddenly wake up as an adult on your 18th birthday. You slowly change your voice, deepen, responsibilities pile up, and your back starts hurting for no reason. But when exactly did you become an adult? The Sorites Paradox messes with your head because it asks, when does a bunch stop being a bunch? And honestly, no one really knows. Banach-Tarski Paradox. The Banach-Tarski Paradox sounds like science fiction, but it's a real, proven concept in pure mathematics. In the simplest terms, it says that you can take a solid ball, break it into a finite number of pieces, and then reassemble those pieces to create two identical copies of the original ball. You heard that right. You end up with two balls, both the same size as the one you started with. Now, before you grab a baseball and try to duplicate it, here's the catch. This only works in mathematical theory, and it relies on incredibly strange pieces that can't exist physically. These pieces are so weird that they defy any real shape or volume. The paradox uses the axiom of choice, a controversial principle in set theory, to allow for these non-measurable sets. The Banach-Tarski Paradox doesn't break the laws of physics, but it does stretch the limits of what we think is logically possible in math. It's one of those results that seems to say, mathematics doesn't always care what your common sense says. In short, it's weird, it's fascinating, and it proves that math can be just as mind-blowing as a sci-fi movie. Unexpected Hanging Paradox. Imagine a judge tells a prisoner, you'll be hanged at noon on one weekday next week, but the day will be a surprise. You won't know which day until the executioner shows up. The prisoner thinks hard. If I'm not hanged by Thursday, then it must be Friday. But if I know that, it won't be a surprise. So Friday's out. Then he reasons backwards. If Friday's out, then Thursday must also be out, because if he's still alive on Wednesday night, he'll know it's Thursday, and so on, until he concludes he can't be hanged at all. But then, say he's hanged on Wednesday, and it's a complete shock. That's the unexpected hanging paradox. It's a logic puzzle that messes with your idea of prediction, surprise, and reasoning. The prisoner's logic seems airtight, but reality proves it wrong. Yet the judge's statement also seemed truthful. This paradox fascinates philosophers and mathematicians alike because it mixes logic with human expectations. It's about how our reasoning can collapse when we try to predict something that's specifically designed to be unpredictable. Just when you think you figured it out, it surprises you, exactly as promised.